Hey, everybody, welcome to another Hall of Great episode of Phil and the Mike. As always, am Darrin Michael, and with me, the man who is back from Cooperstown. I don't know if you all saw him on TV, where he made the incredible announcement of Scott Rolen's election into the Baseball Hall of Fame, Mr. Phil Calise. Now, tell me the truth. How did you do that without a straight face? Let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah, I got a fired up partner, ladies and gentlemen. I got a fired up partner. I am also not. We're in agreement, but you're definitely more fired up about that. So I'll let you lead the way.
Yeah. I wanted to start off with the Hall of Fame. Now, Phil, did you see there was a really touching video yesterday of Scott Rolen telling his parents that he got into the Hall of Fame?
I didn't see that.
It's been going around. It's a really nice video, and it was very emotional and great. On listen, first off, let's congratulate Scott Rolen on making it into the Hall of Fame. Whether you think he's a
Sure.
Hall of Famer or not, good for him.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I'm not gonna take anything away from the guy because he got elected into the Hall of Fame.
It's not his fault.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
But plain and simple, the Hall of Fame voting process is broken. That's what
yeah,
it comes down to, and I think that's what we need to really focus in on today. When you look at things, and Phil, you and I were discussing this earlier, and I love the way that you said this, and you said, one of the ways that you can kind of tell if somebody's a Hall of Famer is just the eye test. Is this guy a Hall of Famer? And when I think about Scott Rolen, or I think about even Fred McGriff, a couple things come to mind. One, great players, good names, guys that were going to produce, but never the best player in the league, never the best player, um, you know, overall. I mean, you don't think of, when you think of, the 80s and 90s, does Fred McGriff come to mind? No, he really doesn't. When you think of, the 90s and the 2000s, is Scott Rolen on the top of your mind? He's not. So to me, it's like, if these guys if they don't look like Hall of Famers, they don't feel like Hall of Famers, they don't smell like Hall of Famers, they shouldn't be Hall of Famers. You know what
yeah.
I'm
I mean,
saying?
I I think Fred McGriff is closer to a Hall of Famer than Scott Rolen, and we were joking about this earlier. Scott Rolen getting inducted in the same year that Fred McGriff gets in by the baseball committee, it
Yeah.
almost helps Fred McGriff because I think most people, if they see both of those names, is almost now all your attention is going to turn to Scott Rolen not being deserving, and Fred McGriff's almost going to get a pass because he got in at the right year. Because I do think Fred McGriff is much closer to a Hall of Famer than Scott Rolen. I don't think either belongs. Scott Rolen's an atrocity. Like he doesn't belong anywhere near the Hall of Fame unless he buys a ticket. So not a good
And
choice.
and a good player. And you know what? And something that I'm going to talk about, maybe a future episode. I'm going to talk about all the guys. There are a bunch of guys in the Hall of Fame that shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And I think the problem is, you're repeating the mistakes of the past. It's like, okay, well, just because Jim Cott got in, who averaged 11 wins a season, doesn't mean that, okay, well, if this guy gets in, then anybody gets in. I mean, it's like, I just don't understand it. Something that bothers me, Fred McGriff, let's take him first. I don't think he ever got more than like 20-25% of the votes in his time on the committee, the voting committee. And
The vote, yeah.
then he goes to the Veterans Committee and he gets 16 out of 16 votes. I mean, come on. And then Scott Rolen, and I know you and I have some interesting views on this, and I want to get to this, but does anybody realize that 6 years ago he got 10% of the vote? 10. And one of the things you can say, and I know you've said it, is, hey, you kind of focus your votes on certain people. And then when those people are off, then other people get the votes. And it turns out that this is a very, very weak year for the Hall of Fame. And so Scott Rolen gets a lot more votes because you're not comparing him to his peers. You're comparing him to the other guys that are up for the vote, which is crap. But if you look at the typical Hall of Fame voting ticket, you can choose up to 10 names. And the average every year is somewhere between five and a half. So if he got 10% of the vote, that means that people that were only casting votes for 5 or 5.5 people weren't voting for him then anyway when they had the opportunity. And now all
Yeah,
of a sudden,
and
6 years later, like what happened in 6 years that this guy goes from 10% to 76%? Did he all of a sudden in his retirement, did he suddenly get much better? Did his stats get much better? Because the way I look at it, nothing has changed except that the Hall of Fame system is just completely broken.
well, and when you say like it was a weak class this year, and that's, you know, a big part of how he gets in. Obviously, the elephant in the room is, why is any year a weak class? Any year is a weak class because they're not putting in all the steroid guys, right? Or the alleged steroid guys. So these writers who normally pick 5, 6 names on average are resisting putting in the obvious 10, 12, 14 guys or whatever the number is at this point, right? There's a good dozen or so that are just being left off that are clearly heads and tails better than a lot of these guys that are getting in. And then a year comes along where like Scott Rolen, they talk themselves into it because it's like, well, I'm not going to vote for Bonds and Clemens and Manny and A-Rod and this one and that one. And so, okay, who's next? Well, I mean, you know, imagine doing that with any Hall of Fame. If you go get rid of the top 10 most deserving, all right, who's next?
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. And
Yeah.
so then if you do get a weak year where it's not, you know, 5 years ago, there wasn't the greatest retirement class, then you get a situation like this. And I think what makes it worse for me, and I think we agree with this, is even if you were going to eliminate those 10, 12 guys because of the Hall of the steroid allegations, there's still better guys to pick.
You know, and it's interesting because
So
you know,
it's
like I
still
said,
bad.
I kind of talked myself into this, but yeah, I mean, you know, and it's interesting. I don't know how that just came. You're not comparing it. You're supposed to be comparing it to the guys that you played with, and they're not. They're comparing it to
Yeah.
the guys that are on the ballot, and that just boggles my mind because when you think of the '90s, yes, you know what, you think of the steroid guys or the alleged steroid guys. You know, the Bonds, the Sosa, the McGuires, the Clemens, fine. Those were the best players. So what you're saying is, okay, let's get rid of all the top players, and then who are the best players after them? But that doesn't make them the best players. That makes them very good players that had very good numbers. But you know, I mean, I think of Hall of Fame.
We're
This is
we're,
what
obs-
comes
we're
to my
obsessed
mind.
with somebody being a Hall of Famer versus just being very good too. I feel like we really lose sight of what just a really good player is. That's just what he is. He's just a really good player who, to be perfectly honest, didn't even do it long enough
Mm,
at a level high enough to be a really good compiler. He's not even a really good compiler. If you look at his numbers, they fall. Not only did he not have I always look at it like, did you give me 8 to 10 in your best years where you really like great? Not only
yeah,
did he not do that, then the other way I think you sometimes get in is, all right, if you didn't do that, did you give me 20 years where your career was really long and consistent? He didn't do that.
it's true.
So like if you don't do either one of those things, like if you're not going to be totally great for like an 8 year run or a 6 to 8 year run or even something in that window, and
Yeah,
then you're not going to have an 18-year very consistent career, then why are you getting in the Hall of Fame?
amen to that, brother. That's what I
It's
say.
just, I mean, and we were rattling off a few names that have nothing to do with steroids that could and should be in over Scott Rolen. I
Well,
don't know if you
let's
want to, I don't know if
yeah,
you want to
let's
save
yeah,
that,
I
but
do. I got a whole list that I want to get to, but you know, you think of the Baseball Hall of Fame, you know, like I grew up thinking that it was like this incredible, like holy place, you know, this is where all of the all-time greats reside forever, you
yep.
know. I think of, you know, somebody says to me, what do you think of when you think of the Hall of Fame? And I think of Babe Ruth, I think of Ted Williams, Hank Aaron, Ty Cobb, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, Stan Musial. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yep.
Never do I think, you know, I'm not going to go, yeah, who do I think of? I think of Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, Hank Aaron, Fred McGriff, Ty Cobb, Willie Mays, Scott Rolen. No, no, no. Hall of Fame, not Hall of Great. It's two different things.
I
You want
think
to
you're
open up another
using the
museum for
word
these
great too
guys?
easy
Open up it.
too. I think you're throwing the G word around too easily too. I wouldn't go with great. I would say good. That's all I'm giving Scott Rowland. He's good.
Well, okay. This is what I want to do, right? I'm gonna pull up a display that I want everybody to take a look at. Okay. And hopefully everybody can see it right now. Do you see that, Phil?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So here we go. I put this all down. I mean, there's so many different metrics that you can look at, right? I just pulled what I thought were some of the most important ones. Okay. And I wanted to compare. I've got, what is this? I've got another 10 guys that I feel could be deserving of the Hall of Fame versus Fred McGriff and Scott Rolen. You know, when you look at Fred McGriff, immediately what stands out at you is the home runs and the RBIs. Solid, right? They're solid. He did appear in 5 All-Star games, never was an MVP. He never won a Gold Glove. He won 3 Silver Sluggers, and he was a World Series champion. All-Star MVP, 4 top 10 MVP votes. Led the league in home runs twice, OPS, and intentional bases on balls. To me, that's actually an important category because that shows that you were a fear hitter. I'm not going to say I'm not going to put a guy in the Hall of Fame because he leads the league in intentional bases on balls every year, but I still think that's a big thing. So there's definitely some good things, but I look at Fred McGriff and I say, okay, you know what? There's good numbers. The home runs and the RBIs are good numbers. But one, he was a compiler. He played a long time. And 2, was he ever the best at his position, or was he among the best? And he just wasn't. He just wasn't. And then you get to Scott Rolen, and it's like, okay, 316 home runs, that's fine. 1287 RBIs, that's fine.
I think the biggest case why Scott Rolen is not a Hall of Famer is he's nowhere near as good as McGriff's numbers, and we don't think McGriff is. So it's like
right. But so where does he beat McGriff? Well, he's got 8 Gold Gloves, but he only has 1 Silver Slugger. He won the Rookie of the Year. They both have a World Series. Neither of them have an MVP. So neither of them were the best. He never finished in the top 10 in MVP, and he never led the league in any category. Yeah. So what are you looking at? You're looking at WAR because he's got a 70.1 WAR. I mean, basically that's why that's why he got in. Everybody's just enamored. Oh, he was such a good defensive player. Well, you know what? If that's the case, then let's go down and let's look at guys like Keith Hernandez. How about him? All right. So we look at him. He wasn't really a home run hitter. He wasn't an RBI guy. His batting average 296 was decent. His on-base percentage 384 was better. His WAR 60, that's solid. He won an MVP. He was also in 5 All-Star games.
Well, and he's also arguably the best first baseman defensively ever.
Yeah, he definitely was. 2 Silver Sluggers, 2 World Series, and he led the league in categories a few times. Like, why is he never mentioned for the Hall of Fame?
Yeah. We were talking about this before you showed me this graphic, and the guy I mentioned quickly was Jeff Kent. To me, Jeff Kent is the overwhelming on this list. And it's a good list. It's an excellent list. On this list, I'm looking at 2 names that I would hone in on because I just think I'll give you the names. The 2 names to me, and I know your guy is Dale Murphy, and I think you could definitely make a good case for him. But the 2 names that stand out to me, because in the era I watched baseball, these 2 guys were the best or second best when they were playing. Jeff Kent, the most prodigious home run hitter, second baseman of all time.
Yep.
The back 11 years of his career were just absolutely amazing.
Yep.
So he's number 1 in my book out of this list. And I'll put your guy third, Dale Murphy. My number 2 guy, and maybe he'll start to get talked about more, but he just was a player to me that just blew me away in certain areas. Is actually may surprise you a little bit, but my number 2 guy on this list is Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones was the best defensive center fielder I had seen in my lifetime, and that included Ken Griffey Jr. What he did back when he was doing it in the 90s and 2000s was amazing, but he also had big power numbers for a center fielder.
Yeah.
And the guy was just, to me, a really top player and a unique player. So I don't know, I didn't look at all his numbers. His batting average was on the lower side, but I mean, the 434 home runs does speak to that.
Yeah.
His WAR certainly belongs, I guess, respective to where he's at. His 10 Gold Gloves. Andrew Jones was just a unique player to me. So those would be the 2 guys I would put in clearly. Dale Murphy third. Those would be my top 3. Keith's my guy, Keith Hernandez, but I feel like there's guys that were more deserving than him. But certainly he deserves to be in over Scott Rolen too. So
the interesting thing, and I kind of highlighted part of this in yellow. To me, that's more of an indicator of how dominant you were in the time that you played. Like if you look
Yeah.
at a couple of these guys that you've probably never heard of, like Bill Freehan and Ken Boyer, like take those two guys for example. Okay, Bill Freehan, I mean, look at his numbers: 200 home runs, 758 RBIs, batted 262. That's nothing to write home about. All right, but he made 11 All-Star games and won
Hmm.
5 Gold Gloves and a World Series.
Yeah.
Okay, to me, you know what? Are his stats the best? No. Was he the best catcher during his generation? I mean, it sure seems like it, right? I mean, 11 All-Star games he went to. And then you look at Ken Boyer. I mean, he even tops him. You know, he's got 11 All-Star games. He's got 5 Gold Gloves, and he even won an MVP award.
Can I give you a shocking stat while we're looking at this that just
Yeah.
blows me away?
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually like this guy a lot. And he's, probably top two most famous World Series home runs of all time, Mr. Joe
Yep.
Carter.
Yep. Yep.
He has a 306 on base percentage. Oh my
Yep.
gosh, is that horrible?
It's
And he has a
terrible.
19 and a half war. I'm not the biggest war guy, but that jumps off the page terribly. Oh my gosh.
You know what? And it's funny because I noticed that too. As I was putting this together and I'm trying to come up with guys that I thought were pretty similar, I'm thinking, you know what? Joe Carter, and I remember that home run. I can still see him
Yeah.
jumping up and down, you know.
Walk off game seven home run. I mean, it's top two most famous ever.
Listen, and Joe Carter, listen, he might be in a situation kind of like Dale Murphy in the fact that I think that if Dale Murphy had gotten to 400 home runs, he would have already been in the Hall of Fame.
Mm,
I think if Joe Carter had 400 home runs, he might have been gotten more consideration. But yeah, when you look, I mean, you can see. I mean, he was in 5 All-Star games, 2 Silver Sluggers, two
yeah.
World Series victories. I
No, a
mean,
lot of the stuff stands out, but that's the
good, but
lowest on base percentage I could even fathom. My gosh.
yeah, I know, but so that's kind of how I look at it, and
Yeah.
my family, we're friends with Fred Lynn, and I'm obviously a huge fan of his. I mean, I
He's
even look at him, right? I mean,
Yeah, he belongs
this,
in the he belongs on that list for sure.
yeah, I mean, look, an MVP, 9 All-Star games, 4 Gold Gloves, Rookie of the Year,
Yeah,
ALCS MVP, All-Star MVP. He led the league in things a few times.
absolutely.
I mean, that's how I look at this stuff.
Yeah.
And to me, when I look at this list, yeah, Scott Rolen played in a few All-Star games. That's great. He won a bunch of Gold Gloves. That's great too.
Yep.
But what did he do that really made him stand out? What did
No,
he lead
listen.
the league in? I mean, when would you ever say, "Wow, Scott Rolen is the best"? I mean, last time I checked, you don't get in the Hall of Fame because you're the best fielding third baseman of your generation.
Yeah. As you guys, as our audience could tell, it's the NFL championship weekend, and we've spent 20 minutes talking about the Baseball Hall of Fame. It shows you where my co-host passion really lies here. That's for
I
sure.
am, me in the Hall of Fame, and you're going to see some of these other guys coming up, but you know what? Based on what I'm saying, like a guy like Omar Vizquel, right? Like I look at him, and and he got like 10% of the votes this year. He's still on, or 15%, something like that. But I mean, if you look at his numbers, like 2,877 hits. I mean, did you even realize he had almost 2,900 hits? I mean, nobody knows that. But here's another guy. He had 11 Gold Gloves, so he was the best fielding shortstop. He also had 400 stolen bases. Yeah, only 3 All-Star games, but I mean, why isn't he getting more consideration? It's just
Hmm.
it's so stupid. It's just so stupid. They're just enamored by who they're enamored by for whatever reason, and I just think it's gotten to the point where it's ridiculous. And wait till you see when on a future episode when I put together some of the guys that are in the Hall of Fame that have no business being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, man.
So it's just and I'm going to say one more thing on it, and then we'll kind of move on. But at the end of the day, it's it's you just because you've made mistakes in the past doesn't mean that you have to keep making those mistakes. It's like, yeah, you know what? We put in Alan Trammell, who doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. So you know what? Scott Rowland was better than him, so let's put him in. Or Fred McGriff. Yeah, Fred McGriff is a compiler, but his numbers are better than Harold Baines, and Harold Baines is a Hall of Famer. Harold Baines spent 2 years on the list. The first year he got 5% of the vote. The second year he got less than 5% of the vote. Yet he's in the Hall of Fame. So it's
bad.
these comparisons are just, everything about it is just messed up. And that's all that I'm going to say about the Hall of Fame. So congratulations, Scott Rolen. Congratulations, Fred McGriff. I have both of their autographs, which is nice, but no offense, you guys don't belong in the Hall of Fame. I'm just leaving it there. All right. So anyway, so let's get to some football, my friend. And as I can see, you've taken my advice and you've changed your name from Playoff Phil to Dak Presphil.
Which I gotta own it. I'm 4-6 in the playoffs, like my man Dak. I can't seem to win the big one.
You know what you could also be? You could also be Kirk Cousin Lease.
Yeah, Cousinless. Yep, I could be Kirk Cousin. Yep, I could be that.
So why don't we start off with that 49ers Dallas just riveting offensive juggernaut performance? You know, it looks
I mean, I think if you're if you're Cowboy fans this week, you're hurting because your defense came to play. Brock Purdy was pretty human this week.
He was pretty human.
He was pretty human. He didn't do much. And it wasn't just that the Cowboys had trouble scoring. It was the fact that Dak threw 2 big picks.
Yep.
So like if he just played like Purdy, they might have won.
Yeah.
So if you're a Cowboy fan, you understand that Dak Prescott isn't a top 5 quarterback. He's not Mahomes, he's not Burrow, he's not Allen. You know, he's not those elite top guys. But to lose to Brock Purdy, who and to get outplayed, and he didn't play that well. So to get outplayed by a guy who didn't play that well himself, that's a tough one for Cowboy fans to swallow. The defense played well. That's a game Dak has to win. It's why I picked them to win, because I thought the game would play out in that the Niners would have trouble scoring. And I think if you would have told most people the Cowboys would hold the Niners to 19, that should have been good enough to win. Not to mention, it's not just 19. He threw 2 picks that led to points. So like he helped the Niners score some of those points. So that was just a bad performance by Dak. One that makes the franchise have to go home on that plane thinking, do we need to change quarterbacks at some point? Because he can't get us over the hump.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You know, and the interesting thing was there were 54 total rushes in the game, 6 field goals, 2 touchdowns. Dak wasn't good. Purdy wasn't great either, but he didn't make any mistakes. And he
didn't make mistakes. And that's the 7th round pick. The last pick in the draft is the one who plays mostly a clean game. And Dak throws picks. And that you couldn't draw that up, because if you would have just told the Cowboy fans and Niner fans, somebody's going to throw 2 picks in this game and somebody's going to have a clean game but not overwhelm you. I mean, listen, maybe you would have said Dak would have been the one to throw the picks, but if you're Dak and you're in your 8th year and you're a top 10, 12 quarterback, you just can't get out. You can't lose that game to Purdy the way it played out. And you can't be the reason you lost. That's what I really should say. You can't be the reason you lost to the Niners. And he was the reason they lost. So yeah, that one, again, the Niners did enough, but I will also say this, that Niner performance from this past Sunday will not get it done in Philly this week.
Oh God, no.
That won't be enough to get it done. And that leads me to the Eagles beat down of the Giants. If we're doing a quick one, we don't have to spend more than 30 seconds.
Let me just ask you about that, because I think as fans, I think everybody probably except for Philadelphia got kind of lost in the fact that, hey, it's the Giants, they're playing really well. And I think midway through the season, I think when you and I were talking about it, like, yeah, you know what, they're getting lucky. They're really not a great team. They're just getting lucky there. And I think we both thought they weren't as good as the Jets this season. And then, you see what happened. But they finished the season really strong. We're all enamored by that. We're looking at Jalen Hurts like, oh, Jalen Hurts is hurt.
Banged up. Yep.
And, and I think you put all those things together. But then when you kind of look back in retrospect, you say, well, the Eagles are a much better team. The Giants have been playing much better than they really are. This game was pretty much destined to be a beatdown if you look back. And
yeah, I mean, listen, I didn't have that wherewithal to think that. I bought into the division rivalry. It's tough to beat a team 3 times.
Yeah.
I bought into the Giants are well coached. I
Yeah.
thought they'd have some schemes that would, they would have some tricks. I thought they'd play with nothing to lose. Um, you did just watch them play a good game against Minnesota. Now, Minnesota's
Yep.
Minnesota, but they still had to go there and win on the road, and they played well.
Yep.
I thought
Yep.
they'd control the clock and give Hurts some trouble. I also thought Hurts was more banged up. He looked healthy this week.
Yeah. He
Um,
did. He did.
but I think the biggest thing is, and if you wanted to look back and say, well, it played out how a smart person would have thought, the Giants are absolutely horrific in Philly. There's something like three in their last 15. They're 3-15 in their last 18 against the Eagles, period. And they haven't won in Philly since I think 2013 or something. Like they
Wow.
don't, where they've
Wow.
won twice in the last decade in Philly. Like they don't win in Philly. The Eagles have had their number for a long stretch of time at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So it did play out the way historically the last decade has said it would play out. And listen, the Eagles now got any naysayers off their back. And now they look like the team that yours truly picked them to make the Super Bowl back in August.
Well, a couple things stand out at me. One, I think the Eagles realize that Hurts is not 100%. I think we can agree that he's not 100%. He's good enough to play. And listen, he didn't make any mistakes. I mean, he still threw 2 touchdown passes, had a rushing touchdown, but they ran the ball 44 times for 268 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's how you
They
win a
bullied
game.
the Giants. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And let me ask you this: Daniel Jones, who everybody's talking about, oh, he's worth the money, he's going to get a big, big contract. He played like the Daniel Jones we expected coming into the season. I mean, he didn't play really well. So, let me ask you this: who's the best player on the Giants offensively in your mind?
I mean, the most valuable player is Daniel Jones, but the most talented is Saquon Barkley.
Okay, Saquon Barkley. All right, you're up. You're in a big, big playoff match against the top team in the NFC. Why in the world does he get 11 touches in the entire game?
Yeah, I
No,
mean the game quickly. I mean, I watched the game. They got down 14-0 pretty quick.
I know, but
They couldn't
you,
they couldn't keep they also were going 3-and-out right away. It was just a game they really just got demolished. They got absolutely demolished. You know what it looked like? It looked like a college mismatch in like early September where like the team just didn't have a chance from the beginning. That's what it
yeah,
looked like.
yeah,
It
yeah,
really
yeah.
looked like
It's
that. It
true.
looked like a
It's true.
top 10 team played a cupcake at home in early September. And like you from the moment offensive and defensive lines matched up, it was like they were overwhelmed.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
push they were getting on the lines, it was just crazy. It looked like just a giant college football mismatch.
Yeah, it
So
was it was bad. Let me ask you this. Do you think I mean I think you probably feel like Daniel Jones is going to get a contract extension. What
mhm.
kind of money do you think they're going to give him?
I think he's going to get a shorter term deal, but for a really good amount. So I think he's going to get something like 3 for 90. That's what I think he's going to get.
Interesting.
3 for 90 to 4 for 110, something in that range.
I mean, he did lead them.
Close to 30 million a year. I know that sounds crazy, but again, Aaron Rodgers is about to get 58.9 million this coming year. Mahomes gets 52 million. Lamar Jackson turned down 40 per. So when you look, Kirk Cousins gets 39 per or 36 per. And I don't even know all the contracts, but the point I'm making is why shouldn't Daniel Jones get between 28 and 32 a year? He plays
Yeah,
in New York. He's the starting quarterback. He had a
he
great
will.
year in his walk year.
Yeah, he will.
He's just gonna, whether you think it's right or not, he's going to.
All right, let's let's move on. Chiefs and Jags. Now, a couple of things that stood out at me. The Jags, they actually averaged 7.6 yards a carry, which I thought was pretty impressive. Now, KC, there was actually a Chad Henne signing, and he comes in the game, and the first thing that I'm thinking is, oh my God, they are in trouble. Mahomes is out. Here comes Chad Henne. And what does he do? His only series that he gets, he leads them to a 95-yard touchdown drive. I mean, my God.
It looked
So
amazing.
yeah, he I'm like, where's Chad Henne been? So maybe he'll be the Jets quarterback next year. I don't know. But KC, I mean, they didn't throw for a lot of yards, but they had 3 touchdowns. Mahomes' ankle. I mean, he came back. He said he's going to play, and we'll see what happens when he plays against Cincinnati. But here's my couple questions for you. One, Kelsey, 14 receptions, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Can anybody cover this guy? I mean,
But you know what? I did watch a lot of the game. He was just like wide open on some like silly little like
yeah,
check downs and
all
some
day
different
long.
things.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it was like, I don't know how the Jaguars, there's no Tyreek Hill anymore on the team.
That's right.
I don't know how the Jaguars, and listen, the Jaguars had a great, they have nothing to be, they have everything to look forward to. They look like
Yep.
they have their stud future quarterback. They have a really good coach. They just came off an incredible comeback win at home in the playoffs after
Yeah.
winning the last week of the year to make the playoffs. Like, trajectory is pointed up for the Jaguars in the weakest division in football. So like everything is working out well. They go to Kansas City with house money. They play a really good game. They got their quarterback of the future. Everything looks bright. But from a defensive standpoint, particularly with Mahomes banged up, how all their concentration wasn't on stopping Kelsey is mind blowing. Like I don't know what they were thinking. There wasn't a lot of things that could beat them. That was the one thing that they had to cover up. I'd have had double teams on Kelsey all game long. And instead, he's catching these like 8-yard passes. Nobody's around him. It's crazy.
It's unbelievable.
But he is the best tight end in football. But I just don't know what they were thinking. So, and I've heard that criticism this week. Like, why wasn't he double teamed? Why wasn't he covered more closely?
Yeah.
I don't understand what they were doing, the Jaguars.
It's something to think about. I don't get it either. But the nice thing is I think that the Jaguars had such a nice turnaround season. I mean,
Yep,
do you see this team continuing to move up
100%.
on the rise? I mean, do you see them in the next few years being one of the best teams in the AFC?
Not you know what? I think it's better than that for them because I think for the next 5 years they're going to own the South, which is going to guarantee them a top 4 seed every year.
That's true.
I think they can close their eyes moving forward and be the number one team in that division. I mean, I don't, it's not even a knock. Look, I mean, the Titans are in a little bit of a limbo after owning the division for a while. The
Yeah.
Jaguars took it from them this year. And the Colts look like they're in shambles. I know they're a good organization overall and they might figure it out, but they don't have a quarterback.
No.
And who's the other team I'm forgetting about? Uh, who's the other team in the South? The, uh, oh my gosh, who are we leaving out?
Texans?
Oh God. Yeah, that's why I was leaving them
Yeah,
out.
they're in
Yep.
there, right?
They're very forgettable. And I mean, listen, that's their division. So I mean, Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson should own a top 4 seed for the next 5 years,
They
and
should. Yeah.
right there alone gives you a shot. So yeah, and then we'll go quick, but I mean, the shocker of the week to me is the Bengals dismantling the Bills.
Yeah.
Not that the Bengals couldn't win the game, but they absolutely beat the Bills down in Buffalo. Burrow clearly outplayed Allen, but more than
Yep.
that, the Bengals ran down their throat.
Yep. Yep.
They bullied them, similarly to how the Eagles bullied the Giants. But it's so stunning, right? Like it's stunning to see the Bills at home get beat down like that and score 10 points. Crazy.
The interesting thing was they went
Crazy.
quick. I mean, after the first quarter, they were down 14-0. And when you're playing,
Yeah,
and
but
here's,
just
but here's part of the challenge too, right? You're playing in the snow, and it was coming down. It was definitely coming down. You're down by 2 touchdowns so quickly. Well, there goes any kind of running game plan that you had. You got to throw the ball, and when you're playing in the snow, you're not going to be as effective in your passing game as you want to be. So you're kind of forced to throw more because you're down early, and it's a recipe for disaster, especially when you're playing against a hot team and a really good team like Cincinnati.
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I just was very disappointed. If the Cowboys are the most disappointed because Dak's performance, you've seen it all week. The Bills fans, nobody wants to beat up Josh Allen because he's so awesome. Um, but that performance wasn't good. The
No,
Bills' overall performance was really bad, and I would not be. I would not be. I'm not as fearful of the Bills in our division anymore. I feel like they could go one of two ways now. They may have to shake that team up pretty considerably because the Bills aren't looking at things like regular teams do. The Bills are
mm-hmm.
looking at how do we win a Super Bowl? That's it.
Yep.
And they may need to shake some stuff up because those lines and that overall team doesn't look good enough to win.
No.
So that's an interesting spot because who thought we'd be talking about that at the end of this year? The Bills don't look good enough to win it. We thought after last year they were, they were the what I just described as the Jaguars.
But listen, it's crazy to think about. So with that being said, let's get into our preview of this week. And I want to start off with something, and I wanted to, and you can tell me how you interpret this. I want to start off with the 49ers at the Eagles, and the Eagles are right now. I looked at the line yesterday, it was 2.5. When Brock Purdy visited Alabama, Nick Saban said this to him. You're below average in height. Your arm strength is whatever. Your accuracy is average. And last week he became the first QB drafted in the 7th round to start in a divisional playoff game. Here's another quote. I don't remember him moving like that at Iowa State, and he didn't test well. He jumped 27 inches, which is terrible. He ran a 4.85. He's got short arms, really short, and he's got small hands. You know how much I love the small hands argument. He's 6'1", and his arm is okay. His short shuttle was okay, 4.45. That's not outstanding. We undervalued his agility and probably the mental side. And San Francisco is the perfect fit for it because they put a lot of importance on that in their offense. In San Francisco, he can operate and play action and boot and screen and manage the game. Now, here's my question, right? Is it more the system or more of how he's been playing?
Seems like the system.
Seem like it's just the system. Okay. All right. So
I feel like that. Yeah.
So if we look at the season on a whole, I mean, so given all that about Purdy and the system, 49ers at Eagles -2.5. What do you think the keys to this game are, and where do you think this ends up going?
Well, I mean, you do have the two probably best defenses in football. And the defenses that wreak the most havoc. The Eagles had 70 sacks on the season. The Niners have studs rushing the quarterback. I think from the Niners offensive perspective, they need to play with more of a mindset that they need to put up more points than they did last week. I don't think 19 probably gets it done. The weather looks to be really nice on Sunday. So I don't think you'll have a weather issue. If I'm the Niners, yeah, you want to keep the ball out of Hurts's hands, but I think you got to let Purdy make some big plays down the field if you're going to have a chance to win. I think he's going to have to. I think if you're the Eagles, that's what you're going to make them do. You're not going to let McCaffrey run on you much. You're going to make Purdy throw the ball down the field. And I think if you're the Niners, you got to keep Hurts in the pocket. You can't have Hurts running all over the field. I'm sure he's going to be trying to run. He's not going to, this is a tough defense for him to face. But I'm sure if you're the Niners, you got to keep Hurts in the pocket on 3rd and 8. You can't let him escape and then run for 15 and kill you. So I think you got to keep him in the pocket and let him beat you as a pocket passer. And if he can beat them as a pocket passer, they're going to win the game. My gut feeling tells me to take the Eagles this week. 2.5 is a very, manageable spread at home. They're basically saying the Niners are almost a slight favorite, obviously, on a neutral field. I'm going to get burned, but like the Purdy performance of this past week where Dak, had a terrible performance, I can't see Hurts doing. And I do think that's kind of Purdy's ceiling in a game against this type of defense. I don't see Purdy being able to exploit the Eagles defense. I think we were able to see what Purdy is more so last week playing against his the first real strong defense. The Bucks stunk. I mean, not the Bucks. The Seahawks present really no challenges.
Right. So I think at the end of the day, I think you're right. I think it's all going to come on to Brock Purdy's shoulders. Can he? Not only can he make the passes and not make mistakes, but more importantly, can he get into the end zone?
Yeah.
Because he's been playing pretty mistake free, so that system is set up that he can do well, but he's got to get rid of the ball right away. So he's got to get rid of the ball quickly, and they've got to get to the end zone. They can't just put up 4 field goals and think they're going to win this game. It's not going to happen because no matter how great San Francisco's defense is, Philadelphia's offense they're going to get in the end zone. It's just going to happen. I mean, there's nothing that you can do about it. They're too powerful. So this game has got to be a game where, the team that wins is the team that puts up more points than probably they're expected to.
Yeah, I think this game will be a little bit on the higher scoring side, which I think most people think top defense versus second best defense. It's going to be very low scoring. But I actually think because the weather, especially, is calling for such a nice day Sunday here, it's supposed to be 50 degrees in Philly.
Oh, that's nice.
I just, yeah, I think this game could be a little bit high scoring. And I think Shanahan, who's a smart coach, knows he's not going to be able to win this game the way the Cowboy game was.
Mm.
I think he's going to understand he's going to have to let the ball loose. So we'll see. I'll take the Eagles, though. I mean, they were my pick to go to the Super Bowl, but I actually like them this week anyway. And 2.5 seems very manageable. So
Yeah.
I'm in on the Eagles. I'll throw
And
a
you know
score
what?
out there because I've been making score predictions. I'll go 27 to 20. 27-20.
Okay, and
Touchdown win.
I think that I don't know necessarily the 49ers are going to win, but at 2.5, I think that they could keep this game close. I wouldn't be surprised if they win. I think they're just on a roll. I think that 49ers offense is just built to win. I think Brock Purdy, I think he's going to step up and become the first Mr. Irrelevant to lead his team to the Super Bowl. That's what I think. So we'll see.
Wow.
We'll
All
see.
right.
Let's go to our next game. Bengals at the Chiefs. Now, this is just a great matchup. The thing that I love about this week is you literally have two potentially incredible games. You know, on paper, these are great, great matchups. The Bengals, who somehow tend to play really well against the Chiefs, we've got a pick 'em game here. I mean, this is a game
The
in
spread on this
Kansas
game is
City.
fascinating.
It's
Fascinating.
crazy.
I read an article this morning about one of the guys out in Vegas, and they usually huddle up. A lot of the big casino heads huddle up before they put odds out to the public. And and they all kind of agreed the skepticism around Mahomes' injury, or the fear of Mahomes' injury, made them move the spread down when they posted it to the public. They were more looking at a 5-point spread, but they put it out as like a 2.5-point spread because Mahomes was such a question mark with a high ankle sprain. And the game quickly got bet down to pick them. And
Wow.
then by the next day, the Bengals were 2.5 points favored. I mean, they said they never see that in an AFC or NFC title game. When you get to that magnitude, you never see 5, 6 point swings by the general public to move a line. Now the game is back to pick 'em. It's pick 'em on ESPN site, which is what we've consistently used all year
Yeah,
when we
yeah,
do
yeah.
these. It's 1 point on a lot of the sports books. The Bengals are still favored by a point, but it's pick 'em right now on ESPN. So that's what we're going with.
Crazy.
Either way, though, I mean, it's a crazy line. Um, it's almost at a point now where it's the two best quarterbacks in football meeting up.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Burrow took a step above Allen, um, beating him head to head in Buffalo after being in the Super Bowl last year. To me, Burrow has now supplanted Allen as number two. I think Mahomes has consistently been number one.
Yep, yep.
So it's the top two quarterbacks in football meeting up. It's Burrow trying to get back to a Super Bowl in back-to-back years against the guy who's lived in the AFC title game his whole career. Since
Yep.
Mahomes has been a starter, this is his fifth straight AFC title game. He's been to two Super Bowls, right? Won one, lost one. Trying to get to his third Super Bowl in 6 years. Burrow's trying to get to back-to-back Super Bowls. Fascinating game.
It is.
Fascinating
It is.
game against two quarterbacks that just always seem to make the right play. They do it differently. Burrow's not a scrambler. Mahomes more of a scrambler, and then makes the deep play and makes all the plays. But fascinating game. The one thing I will say about this game, the defenses will probably end up being the difference, right? Because you look at
Yeah,
the two
yeah.
quarterbacks and there'll be a wrinkle thrown into the mix.
Yep,
But
yep.
what I will say is that for the first time in a long time, a team is facing the Chiefs where I think the Chiefs do not have the better skill position players. Every year it's Tyreek Hill, it's Kelsey, it's this one, it's that one, and they're just loaded. And you
Yep.
look around and you go, how can we stop all this? And then you add Mahomes, obviously, as the top guy on the team, and it's like, how can we stop this? I always felt the Tyreek Hill signing would not have affected them much during the season, but there'd be a game where you'd look back and say they're missing him
Yep. Yep.
because you don't just easily replace that. And I think that game is this weekend. I think Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mixon, the complement of talent on the Bengals at the skill levels is
Yep.
now surpassed the Chiefs. And when you have quarterbacks basically even at this point or close enough, I think that ends up being the difference in terms of offense. And I'm going to take the Bengals this week.
Yeah, I'm going to
on
take
the
the
road
Bengals.
to
I'm going
get
to take
back
the
to the Super
Bengals
Bowl.
too. Now the interesting thing that I think is that when you look at the NFC, you've got two defensive teams, so it's going to be all about who's got the better offense. And then you look at the AFC with two offensive teams, and it's going to be, hey, who can make some big stops? Because
Yeah.
neither of these quarterbacks have been shown that they can really be stopped. I mean, these offenses move, so it's going to be an interesting battle. And it's two completely different games that we're going to watch, which is going to be exciting. And at the end of the day, it literally can be. I mean, any of these teams could be in the Super Bowl, and I'd be happy about it because I think they're
Agreed
all
with that.
deserving of it. Yeah.
You probably have the four best teams meeting in football, so you're
Yeah.
guaranteed yourself a really good Super Bowl in terms of at least the matchup. The
Yep.
odd thing is, we do look at the Eagles and Niners as obviously the top two defenses, and we look at the Bengals and Chiefs as these big offenses. The
Yeah.
over-unders on both of these games are the same.
Isn't that funny?
The over-unders are 46 and a half or 47, depending on where you look. So
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
dead right on that number, which is interesting. And I think it's because there'll be some time of possession things. I think all the teams will try to give their defenses a blow by keeping the ball.
Yep.
And
Yep.
without Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs have become a little bit more of a possession team.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the big bombing plays that Tyreek Hill used to give them. So the Chiefs are the team that now can keep the ball a little bit longer and kind of need
Yep.
to score.
Yep.
And the Bengals have a lot of those methodical drives where Burrow converts a bunch of first downs, mix and runs. Yeah, he'll hit a couple of big touchdowns, but they both have like offenses that are built for 80-yard drives.
Mm.
So I don't know if the score will be as high as people think because I think there'll be a lot of 6-minute drives that lead to touchdowns or field goals. There won't
Mm.
be a lot of 1-minute drives.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to go Bengals 24-23 to be cute and pick them by one since the game
Wow.
is a pick 'em game. So I'm going
That's
to pick them by
exciting.
one.
That's
And listen, you
exciting.
can't go wrong with any of these matchups in the Super Bowl.
No.
If you
No. I
get
mean,
Bengals 49ers, they met twice in the Super Bowl in the 80s. That's kind of cool. Bengals never beat them.
that would
If,
be.
obviously Chiefs and Eagles, I mean, listen, Chiefs and Eagles have been really good teams for a while in terms of just Super Bowl appearances and been good teams. I think you can't, I don't think you really go wrong with any of these matchups. One call out, Joe Burrow's beaten Pat Mahomes 3 straight times. In a calendar year, he beat him 3 times. He beat him
That's,
in the playoffs, and then he beat him. He beat him in the playoffs. I don't know how he beat him in the. Did he beat him in the playoffs twice? He went 3-0 in 2022 against Pat Mahomes.
it's
Oh
unbelievable.
yeah. So I don't know however it worked out. He went 3-0. So he basically it must have beat him at the end of 2022's regular season, beat him in the playoffs, and then beat him in the regular season this year. I think that's how it is. So he's 3-0 in 2022 against them. To beat Pat Mahomes 4 times would be incredible. I'm picking
Yeah.
him to do it, but
Yeah.
that's crazy. He
It's
almost gets to the
impressive.
point if he beats him and gets to a second Super Bowl in a row and wins it, he might supplant him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's impressive. It's
I mean,
really,
he's right on the
really
border.
impressive.
Crazy.
Well, listen, it's gonna be a fun weekend. I wanted to just end with 2 things. One of them I think is funny, the other one just makes me angry. There was an audit done by LSU. Did you hear about this one?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Somehow they accidentally overpaid Brian Kelly by $1 million.
Does that never happen to you?
God.
You never get accidentally overpaid by $1 million?
Dude, I don't get overpaid by $5, let alone $1 million. I mean, my God. I mean, talking about boneheads. And then the thing that really pisses me off, and you know how I feel about LeBron James, they just named the players for the McDonald's All-American high school basketball game, right? And there's 12 guys on each side that get picked, so you think it would be the top 24. Well, Bronny James he's ranked about 40th overall in the country, right? But of course, he gets named to the McDonald's All-American game. But, a lot of people are going to say that it's well-deserved, but I say it's because his name is LeBron James.
Yeah, probably.
And that
Probably.
just,
You hate LeBron though, and I don't, so we don't
you know what
always.
would happen? His dad would start crying if oh, my Bronny, he's the best player. He should have been in the All-American game. I mean, they want LeBron James at the game. They want a LeBron
Yeah,
James playing in the game. So of course,
it's good
whether he's
business.
40th
It's good
best
TV.
player or 100th, it doesn't matter. He was going to make the game.
It's good TV. Yep. Yeah.
LeBron James.
I understand why that makes you mad. I get it.
Baseball Hall of Fame voting. I'm
True.
just angry today. NFL football playoffs.
Let's
Excellent.
go.
Excellent.
Those should be two
So,
great games. Sit back and relax, enjoy those games.
yeah. Hopefully it'll be a great weekend, and looking forward to everything. Next week we're going to talk about. They announced the finalists for all the awards. I'm not sure when the award show is. Hopefully it's before we do the next. It's after we do the next podcast, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. But
Okay.
I want to talk about a lot of that stuff and some other things. So great show. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Phil and the Mike.
See you guys.